A temple of solace where a hermit lives and prays. Sounding the temple bell, he conjures his spirit and its blissful ways. In a swift match, the clones dance and walk the tranquil plain. And then the stars glisten, and then the sun wanes. Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Diablo III In-Depth, a series where we discuss important features of the game in extreme details. In this episode, we shall be covering Monk's Wave of Light. So lift your right hand and get ready to ring the bell of wisdom, Monk style. Let's start off with basics. Wave of Light is Monk's one true area damage skill that offers high burst potential. Combined with Monk's high resource pool, an advanced player can cast multiple bells and wreak havoc on the battlefield. Numbers are straightforward and will change as time goes by, but for now, a standard runeless Wave of Light will hit for a 605% of weapon damages wholly in an area ahead of Monk. The attack is then followed by a second attack that deals damage in a straight line. Only a mere 79%, but this is a very important part of the skill and will be discussed later. Spirit cost of a single bell is very high. Highest for Monk in fact, a total of 75 for each bell cast. It is strong but expensive, so knowing when to use a bell is most crucial. Now let's move on to the runes. Every single rune for this skill buffs the already high damage per spirit spend ratio of the skill. The first rune adds a heavy hitting physical damage that causes stun on the first hit of the casted bell. The skill is very useful and can be used by Monk when goal is to create space. Speak to a good hardcore player and you will understand how valuable this skill is. Next up is Explosive Light. This is AoE galore. A bell is dropped on top of a Monk's location and multiple clones deal fire damage that make the skill very useful, especially when timed with Monkey King bonus. Empowered Wave is a little guy that packs quite a punch and can be used to deal holy damage with low spirit cost. This is the cornerstone rune for AoE builds that utilize cost reduction stats. If ice is your thing, then Shattering Light will hit your enemies harder for increased critical hit chance. Use it for a tough situation after you've frozen your enemies to get the most out of this skill. It's a great skill for party play, especially when you're the one doing all the carrying. Final skill is the Almighty Pillar, a skill that is least understood by players. On paper, it offers the highest damage per spirit spend ratio, but it requires practice to be used effectively. The second instance of the damage is over time and therefore requires monsters to be locked in an area. Therefore using this skill with a slow or a crowd control impairing item is crucial and should be your favoured skill as you progress in the game. Now that we are familiar with the basics, let's move on to items. We all know how to stack elemental damage, so we'll cover the ones that benefit the skill straight away. Let's start with the strange one, Mind's Eye. This legendary buffs your spirit regen when standing in Inner Sanctuary. A bonus to add onto this item is a Polearm Vigilance that can auto-cast a skill. So use it with a skill and add Wave of Light with Empowered Wave for Bell Spam Heaven. This item added with some base spirit regen can make you spam Bell for days. Just don't forget to stand still when you're casting. Next one is Kekegi Spirit. The best rune for this item is undoubtedly Explosive Light due to its long range potential. The proc happens all too often and with this rune you can wipe out the entire screen with the skill. The final item is a fun one, Zolgrin's Grace. Add a pillar to this mix of awesomeness and you plant lightning bolts on the entire screen, making it annoying for enemies. Well, that's the goal, right? As far as weapons goes, I can only think of one. Incense Torch to the Grand Temple. If you kill a set amount of enemies, you have a free Wave of Light. Add a special set to the mix and you see the birth of a new fun build. But hey, that's a secret for now. Now that we're done with the items, let's talk about the gameplay aesthetics. Wave of Light is a great skill that has a high risk and reward feature, meaning your build's success depends on the time when you drop them. If monsters are at full health and you have limited spirit, usually the goal should be to soften them up before you land one big bell. Also, if you happen to kill less than 4 to 5 enemies with a bell, then in principle, you're wasting your skill and are better off using a Lashing Tail kick. So knowing when to drop a bell is crucial, and so are the skills you can use with it. Most monks prefer Inner Sanctuary and Palms with bells, although it's a nice choice, for most scenarios it's an overkill. Since a bell does area damage and hits multiple enemies, all opponents will lose similar health at the same time, making the Sanctuary and Palm more of a luxury skill than a necessary one. Of course there are exceptions to this case, but for most it's very true. So instead, using skills such as Blinding Light, Deadly Reach, Dashing Strike can set you up in a position where your bell can do the most damage. Final note is on gear. If you plan to use bells in a build, it is usually wise to run a dual wielding setup with a strong main hand offering high weapon damage, so that your bells may hit harder. Of course, two-handers would be theoretically better but not in the current state of the game. To add it all up together, a bell is a skill that is used to deal a large amount of area damage to an even larger crowd. A monk using this skill should always use Mythic Rhythm as a passive and make the most out of it by chain disabling and then nuking enemies again and again. So this marks the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the content. This has been the Holy Hermit for you. Take care of yourself and remember that karma is like a bell. The louder it rings, the clearer the mind becomes.